Now, should ratepayers associations be revived? They played a critical role during the days of apartheid and seemingly fizzled out as the new dispensation dawned upon us. But should they be revived, and do they have a role to play in today's scenario? Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Imtiaaz, welcome to the program once again.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you for always having me.
All right. So the ratepayers associations, do you think, from your community involvement, they need to be revived?
Absolutely. I mean, areas don't have ratepayers associations. Number one, need to formulate and form them very quickly. In the informal areas, obviously, we have a challenge in terms of actually you cannot form a ratepayer association because the informal sector don't really pay rates. So we're planning to form different committees for those areas so that they also have representation. And also where ratepayers associations are actually in place, we are saying what do they speak to, what is their agenda, and can we all now come up with probably an agenda that speaks to all of us as a collective. Because as we go around to these different areas, we see that the challenges are basically all the same. However, they have no one to speak to, if you know what I mean, or they don't have an understanding of what to do regarding the issues and their problems. So it's important for us to form ratepayers, number one, but it's also very important for us to form them in a particular manner with KPIs and a clear understanding of what we do.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And the role that you see, in a practical sense, some of the examples where you have seen ratepayers associations changing their communities, changing the circumstances, making a difference. What would you say those are?
When it comes down to the different wards, I mean, you got to have a ratepayers association based on the wards you live in, right? It's got to firstly have an equal understanding of the entire area or equal participation of the entire area. That's number one. But ratepayers associations don't normally speak to things like empowerment, upliftment of your entire community. So it's basically about understanding who lives in your community, who's part of business in your community, how do they employ, where do they employ from, and then how then do we empower that particular neighborhood in terms of upliftment and empowerment. That speaks to the one part. The other part speaks to crime. As much as the community policing forums exist, what we must remember is that the community policing forum is basically the platform where the community and the police actually engage. However, where does that information come from? It has to be where the CPF is part of the ratepayers association and they're taking the issues that are related to crime and take it to police through the different platforms. So it's about wearing caps and it's about wearing platforms, and that's the most important and key thing. Now, and then on the other hand, we've got councillors. So we've got councillors in all different areas, some of them 100%, and not to take away from them, that they do the work, right? You also have something called ward committee. Now, what was the functionality and the job of the ward committee? The ward committee was supposed to assist the councillor in different portfolios. So you get, in a ward committee, it's supposed to be 10 per ward, right? And that's done by election. So you have a ward committee election, 10 people get involved. They're supposed to be basically the committee of the ward councillor to assist you in upliftment of these wards. Right. However, we don't see that happening. We get ward committees formed very quickly, and obviously by just how the process of voting them in is flawed, where it's a whole bunch of people come together and say, we're caucusing for these 10 people to go in. And that's basically for the 1,000 rand stipend that they get. But does the work get done? No, it doesn't. So we're saying ultimately the ratepayers do exist. If they can work with the councillor, then so be it. If they don't have to work with the councillor. But if they need assistance, then at least through that platform, you're not speaking alone. You have a voice as an organization to go to municipality and say, we're the ratepayers association of a particular area. These are the challenges we're facing. Our councillor is assisting us. However, these are the gaps they face and these are the stories that they give us. And then we deal with the issues collectively like that. Now, so that's basically what it is.
Now, I don't know if this is a reasonable or fair question, but in many areas, some people, due to the nature of South Africa and the informal housing sector, are not ratepayers. Are they
Correct.
allowed to be part of the ratepayers association and also make representation?
Now, this is exactly the reason for forming the ratepayers association. You see the dynamics by which an informal area where they don't pay rates, the dynamics of their issues are very, very far are those that actually own homes or actually paying rates. So if we're trying to look at all the issues as a collective, we tend to see that the needs in the informal area definitely are much higher than those that have rates, because we have water, we have electricity, we have those issues. But if we're sitting in meetings and we're discussing all the issues as a collective, then we'll only be discussing the issues that the informal areas have, and we wouldn't be discussing the issues of renew and replace in the streets that where suburban housing is. So we've got to identify the problems and put them into particular categories and deal with them there before we do anything else.
And the relationship between ratepayers and the councillor, do you find that at times that becomes acrimonious, that the ratepayers come up almost in opposition to the councillor, and the councillor now has to take a back seat?
No, you see, the thing is, the idea of a ratepayers association is it has to participate with the councillor. Now, it's only through these platforms that we can identify whether a councillor is willing to work with the community or not. And if that councillor is not willing to work with the community, then the ratepayers should have oversight over them to say, we are going to be complaining to the Speaker of Council or to Council itself to say that we've made these requests on numerous occasions to our councillor, and we're not getting that service delivery. So how do we move forward? So it's about accountability. How do you hold, individuals living in homes want to try and hold councillors accountable. The councillors ultimately are accountable to the communities they serve and they represent, We've got PR councillors. What are they doing? We've given them PR positions, not by virtue of them standing up and saying, I want to be a PR councillor, by virtue of them being voted in as PR councillors. So where is that public representation?
Absolutely. Imtiaaz Sayed, the chairperson of eThekweni Secure. Jazakallah khairan as always. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day.
Jazakallah so much.
Yes, and once again, onto an international note from that local recap of the Ratepayers Association and its importance. Just as we have a minute or two before the 9 o'clock news, an article that I've come up and found in the Spectator, and I think it was about 2 or 3, perhaps 3 or 4 years ago, in fact, where I tweeted at that stage that the actual target of the or the agenda of the Israelis and their association, but the bigger target in their mind is actually Turkey, and this has now almost become a reality. The article that you can find in the spectator.co.uk, the monumental accords being signed in Washington between Israel, the UAE, and Bahrain represent a new era in Israeli peacemaking. These agreements are being signed with Gulf states, and they are a result of shared interests. At the top of the list of Israeli concerns is the Iranian threat. But Turkey's increasingly aggressive stance in the Mediterranean and across the Middle East is easily overlooked as a catalyst for closer Israeli-UAE relations. In the last year, Turkey has invaded parts of northern Syria, sent mercenaries to fight in Libya, launched a military operation in northern Iraq, and threatened Greece, Cyprus, Egypt, and France. Ankara's decision to deploy a naval flotilla in the Mediterranean has led to Greek and Egyptian military exercises, with the UAE participating in the Greek drill and supporting Egypt in Libya. Increasingly, Israel, Greece, Cyprus, Egypt, France, and the UAE share concerns about Ankara's antics. And obviously, the article is written from the perspective of these particular countries: Israel, Greece, Cyprus, Egypt, France, the United Arab Emirates, and their allies, including the United States and many other European states, and not from this view of what Turkey is saying. They may say that they have not invaded northern Syria, that they have rather gone in there to protect refugees and people fleeing from the disaster that Syria has become, that they have not entered into the fight in Libya, but have been welcomed by the UN recognized government and have signed bilateral agreements legally. They would say that they have not gone in to carry out military operations in northern Iraq, but may have gone to stamp out the ISIL threat or the ISIS threat, and that they have their rights in the Mediterranean, and therefore Greece and Cyprus, Egypt, and Israel need to back off and allow them to do what they need to do. So all of this has put Ankara in the crosshairs, it would seem, and that this is the bigger target that the West is after.
Rejuvenating media day by day. This is Salam Media.
An informative Islamic global perspective. This is Al-Azhar News.
It's 9 a.m. and these are your headlines for this Wednesday morning. The African National Congress in KwaZulu-Natal says that it would be guided by the party's integrity committee regarding members facing corruption charges. And the US President Donald Trump said yesterday that a coronavirus vaccine may be available within a month, an acceleration of his own optimistic predictions. Assalamu alaikum, I'm Hatra